So I want to create a series about how to believe, how to have faith, how to trust your imagination. If you're familiar with Neville's work, he says, all is imagination, and the one thing that we have to do is believe. And you'll find this theme in Christianity and in other religions and even self help teachers and other spiritual teachers. Even if we don't have evidence with our senses, if we like to become something, we must believe we already are it. And if you truly believe that with a sense of knowing, and believe it down to every last cell and fiber of your being, your world will reflect that. But it can be hard. I struggled with this a lot. Um, I couldn't reason or rationalize how to believe when my senses were telling me something, and I'd lived, my entire life relying on my senses to make judgments on myself, and even my own judgments were inaccurate, and I'd be making assumptions. So when I first was studying Neville's work, I actually left it because I grew really frustrated that I couldn't believe it. I thought it was foolish after trying for a little bit. But I came back to it because I think it speaks deep truths about humanity and life, and viewed it from a bit of a different angle. And there's a couple of ways that I've been able to convince myself to take the leap of faith to believe, because that's what faith really is. It's a trust fall back into the universe. It's not needing evidence to believe. So, with that said, one aspect of believing that I want to talk about is the idea of polarity. And I want to talk about it. I thought it could be a good starting point because I haven't heard other people talk about it. At least in the Neville Goddard, Edward Art area. Also, I'd like to thank Edward Art for his interpretations of Neville's work and the Bible, and he's helped me so much and inspired me to share after I've been studying Neville's work for some time now. I think I first found Neville about a year and a half ago. So yeah, with that said, the idea of polarity. Let's get into it. It's one way the idea of polarity is one way I was able to convince myself to take a leap of faith and truly believe. So I want to start by just sharing kind of how I came upon the realization, and I was kind of having like a mini anxiety attack at night. I used to have small ones when I was going to bed, and I'd need to distract myself by going on my phone or doing anything to avoid just like sitting there in bed with my thoughts, because I'd spiral into gut wrenching fetal position anxiety about what people thought of me. I was terrified, ashamed, guilty, humiliated of everything I did. I'm remembering stuff from years ago, from that day, from a week ago, and I did this for years, man. It's crazy. I did this for so long. And now that I haven't done it for, 2 months maybe, since I've been really good at practicing Neville's work, maybe 3, I haven't had one bit. A couple weeks ago, I had like a thought come up that, kind of is the beginning of that train of thought into spiraling, and, I was very thankfully easily able to discard the thought. But it made me realize, wow, like I used to go through that for hours at night, and it'd lead to bad sleep and so on and so on. But that said, I started to have this immense anxiety, and I was very aware that I was having anxiety, and the idea of polarity popped up in my head. It was something I've been aware of but never gave much thought to. And just as a preface, I mean, the law of polarity essentially states that everything, has an opposite or a polar counterpart. and that duality is a fundamental aspect of the universe. And there's no official scientific law in physics about this, but if you consider this, you'll find this to be true. I think I really do believe that this is true. This law of polarity. I first heard it articulated in The Power of Now, or Practicing the Power of Now, from Eckhart Tolle. It can be inferred in some biblical verses in Isaiah 45:7. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. And the Lord's name is I Am. It's a huge part of Carl Jung's philosophy about chaos and order and the dark and the light within. To me, it's what the yin and yang symbol is all about. I mean, if you really think about it, black couldn't exist without white, and white couldn't exist without black. If white didn't exist, then all would be black, but then black, you can only tell what black is because white, in contrast to white. And even Neville, I believe, touches upon it, talking about Newton's third law. He says in one of his lectures, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. So create the reaction you want within, and the world must follow. So with that established, I'm in bed, I'm having this, I don't know if anxiety attacks are, but I'm in the fetal position, terrified of what people are thinking about me. And then this idea of polarity comes up in my head, and I realize, if there's this level of anxiety within me, then there must be this much peace within me too, because this level of anxiety literally could not exist without an equivalent level of peace. So, realizing this, I was able to open my heart a little bit, let the anxiety pass, and think. Literally, I was visualizing just a peace within my body, an abstract form of it. And I just felt my body loosen up, and I knew that peace existed in the now, because the now is the only time there is. If you've read Neville or are on a spiritual journey, you'll know this, and it's easy to forget. And I've known this, and look at me having an anxiety attack, dwelling on the past, but I realized this peace existed within me right now, and I just shifted there, and in minutes, not even in 2 minutes, I could breathe. There's so much less tightness in my chest, and I realized this deep reservoir of peace was available to me at all times. And for years, I've been making the choice. It's hard to admit, but we really do make the choice to live in, these states that we embody, and we rationalize and reason our ways into it. And I realized, applying this to Neville's principles, when we live in desire, we can shift to fulfillment, because that desire only exists. That desire couldn't exist without that fulfillment. When we're living in lack, shift to wealth and abundance, and fear, peace, and worry, relaxation. And the key word is shift here. It's really easy to automatically resist when we notice it coming up. It's like, oh, okay, I don't want to be in this lack, in this frustration, whatever it is, but don't resist it, don't fight it, don't try to escape it, let it wash over you. I found it's the only way to get out of it, which is a bit paradoxical. But I find that all of life's deepest truths are paradoxes to some extent. But stay open, let it wash over you, and realize the opposite of what you're feeling is existing right now. It has to. What you're feeling right now you cannot be feeling it if the opposite didn't exist in this exact same instant. So shift to it. And that, because the anxiety was real that I was experiencing that night, I knew the peace was real. And that's why it helped me let go of some of the rationalizations about why I had to feel that way. Because I knew they had to coexist. And that helped me take the leap of faith into peace. And then my thoughts changed. So I hope this makes sense, and I'm curious what, if you're listening, you think about this, if the law of polarity is something that's helped you, or you think about, I personally I found it very helpful, and when I remember the law, it helps me shift into what I desire, into fulfillment. And it's a practice, I'm not an expert at this, but I've had a couple experiences now practicing Neville's work that have been totally convincing, and shocking, that I had to dive deeper into it, and I want to share because it's really made my life a lot better very quickly. And thank you. I hope this helps in your practice of faith.